D&D number 5, Angels in Jesus' Name, Chapter 12. Lizzie drew in a sharp breath and sat straight up, her eyes darting around the motel room. Never bothering off the TV, which she had turned on in order to follow the progress of the search, she'd finally fallen asleep in the wee hours of the morning. Glancing up at the screen now, she saw Keegan's picture. In this picture, he was a little younger and much cleaner cut than the man she knew. It was probably an early FBI photograph. Next to it was a much younger version of the same man, but in military dress. She grabbed the remote and turned up the volume. This was the scene earlier as the two agents were recovered. Her heart soared. Immediately, her eyes filled with tears of gratitude and joy. He's alive, and she was bound and determined to have him back in her life. Hopefully, Jody's coaching would accomplish that. Lizzie watched as Keegan and Jeff were loaded into ambulances. Keegan appeared to be alert. Reporting live from Memorial University Medical Center, here's Brett Richards. She didn't bother to hear the rest. She sprang out of bed and headed toward the shower. An hour later, she stood dressed and ready in front of the mirror, pulling nervously at the low-cut blouse. She wore a tight black skirt that came to just below mid-thigh, paired with knee-high black leather boots. The blouse was violet silk, trimmed with black piping. The long sleeves began at the edge of each shoulder, with the front of the sleeve held to the back of the sleeve with a tiny black bow. Then there was an open hole trimmed in black until it came together again with another black bow at the elbow. Then it was open again until it met with a third bow at her wrist. The neckline was a deep U. Lizzie had been worried that it showed too much skin, but Jody convinced her it was just right. She'd added a touch of makeup, which she usually didn't wear. This she kept to a minimum so as not to appear like a floozy. Her hair was scooped up into a clip at the back of her head, but she pulled little tendrils down here and there to soften the look. Turning from side to side, she bit her lip. Time to put Jody's plan into action. New scene. It was only 11 in the morning. Keegan had been in the OR by 7:30, in recovery by 8, and in a room by 9:15. That room was now filled with loud, boisterous laughter. Keegan had demanded to be released ASAP, and the hospital was only too eager to comply due to the chaos brought on by the media frenzy. He would be released sometime in the afternoon. His buddies, after delivering his bag from the motel room where he'd stayed with Jeff, hung out, flirting with the nurses and giving him a hard time and pretty much causing a commotion. The most recent burst of laughter had been from a joke definitely not repeatable in mixed company. So tell me, Keeg, Braden said, from where he leaned against the far wall, his legs crossed, his arms folded over his chest. Now that you've been resurrected for the second time, how does it feel to be a national hero? Give me a break, Keegan responded. What's the matter, Tanner? Tristan asked. Are you shy? You know as well as I do that I was just doing my job. Any of you would have done the same thing. The media can make a big deal about it, but that doesn't make me a hero. John, who occupied the only chair in the room, shifted position. According to them, right now, you can walk on water. Well, if that were so, Jeff and I wouldn't have had to spend an entire night cuddled together trying to keep from freezing to death. The men chuckled. All I can say, bro, Caleb said from where he sat next to Tristan on the AC unit, is you're my hero. What you did wasn't easy, and I don't know if I would have been as successful as you. Do you realize how many men you faced in order to get to Jeff? Keegan shrugged. I wasn't keeping count. It was 23. You took out 23 men in order to save Jeff. Keegan's face darkened. That many, huh? The room became silent as they thought about what that would entail. Hey, man, Braden said. You did what you had to do to save a life. An American life. Keeg, the men you killed would kill you and your family and any other American without thought, John said. They were terrorists. Don't forget that. Yeah, I know that. It just helps to hear it. So what do you intend to do when they let you out of here this afternoon? Tristan asked. I was thinking you guys would take an old friend out for a drink. Oh, you got that, Braden said. I feel the need to get drunk, Caleb said. Get drunk and get some female companionship in that order, Braden said. He turned to peer at the woman who suddenly appeared in the doorway. Well, hello, gorgeous, he sang. Tristan and Caleb both stood. Whoa, Mama, Tristan moaned. John looked over to the doorway to see who had their attention. Lizzie? She walked into the room. Hi, John, she said softly. Coming around the corner, her eyes met Keegan's. Elizabeth, he said, his tone cautious, his brow furrowed, his eyes traveled over her, his jaw flexed. Hello, Keegan, she said. He sighed. You shouldn't have come. Why not? You said you loved me. I believed you. And I love you. So when someone I love ends up in a hospital, it's only polite that I go and see them. I don't think you're being polite, Elizabeth. She smiled, her chin slightly raised. You're right. I'm not. She walked to the bed, lowered it all the way, then put the guardrail down. Leaning over him, affording him an excellent view, she kissed his lips softly. When she lifted her head, she remained bent over, her face close to his. Don't do this, Elizabeth, he warned. Do what? She asked innocently, resting her forearm on the bed next to his head. He breathed her in. She waited for his eyes to move back to her face. I am very happy to see you alive and well. Aren't you just a little bit happy to see me? He rolled his eyes. It's not that, but what? She said, kissing him again. He closed his eyes. She was clouding his mind. It's no good, he said. I don't understand why you keep saying that. His face darkened in anger. I told you it wouldn't work. Why couldn't you just believe me, huh? Why couldn't you just stay away? I'm not the man you think I am. You don't know the things I've done. Please, Keegan, she said softly, don't make me drive all this way and not even get one hello kiss from you. She brushed her lips over his back and forth. He pushed her away. You don't know what you're doing. She moved close again. I'm pretty sure I do. Stop. Stop now, he ordered. You shouldn't have come, he said, his voice gruff. I had to. I want you. I need you. I love you, Keegan, she muttered between kisses. She ran her hand over his chest. He grabbed it, holding her still. I'm telling you, you're in a danger zone. What are you talking about? I know you wouldn't hurt me. Not physically, anyway. His jaw clenched. There's this thing, Elizabeth. It's called primal post-war or post-disaster reaction syndrome. Sounds interesting. When a man encounters a life and death situation and survives, his sex drive goes into overdrive. She smiled. Just men, or does it affect women too? He closed his eyes. Yes, women too. She bent again, kissed his cheek and then his lips. Ah, hell, he groaned as his arms came brusquely around her, his mouth clamped over hers, and he jerked her across his body. He twisted in the bed, and she gave a squeal as her feet left the floor, and he pulled her into the bed and under him. Are you sure this is how you want our first time to be? Well, not in front of your friends. There's no one here, he said, before he lowered his head to kiss her. She struggled away, looking over his shoulder. There was indeed no one in the room except the two of them, and the door was shut. She looked into his eyes. I'm sure. New scene. 4 large men stood outside Keegan Tanner's hospital room. John, Caleb, and Tristan leaned casually against the wall. Braden leaned against the door itself. So, I guess that's the woman you were telling us about, Braden asked. That's her. She's a great kid. Jody really likes her. I do too, John said. The woman who walked in there ain't no kid. And there's no way that blonde bombshell has 5 kids of her own, Tristan said. It's amazing, but true. And she is like an angel when she's with them. What's more, you should see Keeg with them. He teases them and tickles them and tells them fairy stories. No way, Caleb said. Please, don't tell me any more. The hero image is fading fast. John grinned. It'll happen to you one day, too. When hell freezes over. The cute little nurse Braden had flirted with earlier approached the door, but Braden stepped in front of her. Hello again, Braden said, smiling down at her. She smiled back, causing dimples to appear in her cheeks. Hey, she said. So, what time does your shift end? He asked. I don't think I should be telling you that kind of private information. Surely you can trust me. We're all close friends of the hero in there, he said, motioning toward the door. We're the ones who found him. She frowned. Are you FBI? Nope. I work in the private sector. I got a few businesses going. Like what? Well, for one, I own a cycle shop. As in motorcycles? Yep. I've got a big one. How would you like to go for a ride? He said, leaning close. He heard one of his buddies give a groan, and she giggled. I might like it just fine. I get off at 3. She tried to move past him to go into the room, but he put his arm across the threshold. I'm afraid I can't let you go in, he said. She looked up at him, her eyebrows raised. I beg your pardon? He shook his head. Sorry, but he's doing a private interview, Tristan offered. Yeah, a private interview. It shouldn't take too much longer. Well, I suppose I'll have to come back then. She turned to leave. See you out front at 3, he called after her. I guess you just changed your plans for the night, Tristan said. Not too much, I'll just reverse it. New scene. This doesn't change anything, he said sharply. Doesn't it? She answered with a smile, keeping calm and confident just as Jody had coached her to do. Let me tell you something about what happened here, Elizabeth. Then maybe you'll begin to understand what kind of man you're dealing with and why you need to move on and find someone else. Fine, by all means, speak. When a man goes through what I did yesterday, his survival instincts kick in. Those instincts are primal. Then you walk in looking about as fine as a woman has a right to be. Really? She said, smiling in satisfaction. He shook his head impatiently. Elizabeth, you come in here while I was still in that survival mode. And what we just did, it was pure, instinctive, primal lust, nothing more. You mean I offered and you took without a care, period? You were so revved up in the He-Man thing and I fit the bill nicely? Very good, Elizabeth. You got it exactly. She shook her head. I think I know you better than you know yourself. You love me, Keegan. Yes, I do. I've told you that, and I meant it. But what just happened here had nothing to do with love. I disagree. I could feel it. Keegan, people who love each other are meant to be together. Not always. So you have no intention whatsoever of continuing a relationship with me. Now you're getting it, he said cruelly. She worked hard to keep the hurt out of her eyes. Fine, Keegan, but I think, after all you've done, after all the lies, and I forgave you, I think you owe me the courtesy of an explanation. I deserve to know exactly why you've come to this decision. Elizabeth. But not now. I've run out of patience with you. It's my understanding that you're being released this afternoon. You've certainly proven you're physically well. You will come to my motel room tonight and we will talk this out. It's the River Motel just down the street, number 112. I won't be there. Yes, you will. You owe me. I'm not asking for much. She straightened her skirt and blouse, pushed her hair back over her shoulder, and turned to leave. Elizabeth, there's nothing more to say. I won't be there. You're no coward, Keegan Tanner. Face the music. I'll see you tonight. She turned and left the room. Braden moved aside as the door opened. The 4 men looked down at her as she emerged. Her face and chest were marked red from Keegan's beard. Her mouth was swollen. One bow at her shoulder had come untied. Her hair hung loose beside her face. She brushed her hair back over her shoulder and turned her head toward John. I'm staying at the River Motel, room 112, just down the street. Please bring him to me tonight. Lizzie, I don't know that, she smiled sweetly. Jody told me to tell you that she's depending on you to do the right thing. John muttered something, running a hand through his hair. She turned her big blue eyes on the rest of the gang, looking into each face individually. Finally, with as much dignity as she could muster, she nodded. Gentlemen, she turned calmly and took her leave. They watched her walk away. New scene. What the heck are you talking about? Tristan asked, incredulous. You heard what I said, Keegan responded, tossing back the contents of his glass. Let me see if I got this straight, Caleb volunteered. You found the perfect girl. You fell in love with her, and then you dumped her. Keegan nodded his head several times, sighing heavily. He glanced around the bar, thinking of the difference between this one and the one he and Jeff had patronized a few days ago. This joint was lively, crowded, upscale. On the bandstand, a trio of musicians played and sang familiar tunes. It was a nice place. Are you an idiot? Tristan asked, garnering Keegan's attention effectively. I don't think so. I have my reasons. Aha! Caleb said loudly. So there is something wrong with her. Is she a nag? Or maybe she's a slob. Come on, Keeg. What gives? Keegan sighed again. This woman, Elizabeth, is sweet. I mean, really sweet. Innocent, young, eager to please. She could win a Mother of the Year award. She's intelligent. She works hard. She never complains. She doesn't have a mean bone in her body. She's perfect. Not to mention she's great in bed. Keegan's eyebrows rose. I mean, she looks like she is, Caleb amended. Keegan forgave him since he was further gone than the rest of them. Let me see if I can explain. Wait a minute, John said, motioning toward the door of the bar. Braden's back. He'll want to hear this, too. Braden sauntered up to the table, a smile on his face. Enjoyed yourself, did you? Tristan asked. You know it. She likes my motorcycle. Yeah, I just bet she does, Caleb laughed. John kicked out a chair. Have a seat, lover boy. We're just about to hear why Keegan dumped the perfect woman. You dumped that pretty little Miss Lizzie who came and cheered you up today? Yeah, Caleb said, because he's in love with this girl, but he dumped her because she's too sweet or something stupid like that. He sniffed, shaking his head. It just makes me feel so bad, you know? Braden motioned to the waitress and took a seat, grinning at Caleb. I think you've about reached your quota for the night, huh, big boy? Who, me? I'm just getting started. Braden gave the waitress his drink order, and the others asked for refills, and Braden watched her walk away, his eyebrows shooting up. She's mine, you hog, Tristan said. Braden switched his attention back to his friend. Sorry. One can't help but look. So tell us, Keegan, dearest, why you dumped the gorgeous blonde. He sighed. Like I was trying to tell these guys, it's just better for her all around. For her. Yes, for her. 'Cause you ain't no good, right? Tristan asked. Well, that's pretty much it, Keegan said. Why don't you tell them why you think you're not good for her? John put in. Keegan glared at him. Go ahead, Keeg, Braden said. We're your friends, your brothers in arms. We'll understand and support you. Keegan looked from face to face, and finally he drew a breath. I was talking to Nigel, who is my SO at the Bureau. He reminded me of the kind of violence I'm used to. He pointed out to me if Elizabeth knew half the things I've done, she'd cringe every time I touched her. I don't want her subjected to that. I don't want her to feel revulsion when I touch her. I don't want her to know what the world is really like. I don't want her to know the things I've done. Granted, what I've had to do. I don't want her to see me as a monster. She's such a gentle creature. She needs a gentle man, like a doctor or a teacher or someone who hasn't, like slit people's throats. They sat quietly digesting Keegan's heartfelt monologue. Well, that's a load of crap, Braden said. Keegan shook his head. What happened to you understanding and supporting me? Well, I thought your explanation would be better than that. Keegan, John said quietly, the only sober one in the group, I've seen you with her. I've seen her bring out all the gentle things in you. I've seen how you are with those little girls. There is no one better than you to take care of that family. Keegan shook his head sadly, looking down at his hands. I'm a trained killer. I went through the same training as you, Tanner, John said sharply, and I refuse to be labeled a killer. We're protectors. We don't want to kill. We don't enjoy killing. God knows I hope I never have to again in my life. Yet someone threatens my life or the lives of those I love, I'll do what I have to do to defend and protect. We defend those that cannot defend themselves. The others at the table nodded in agreement. We're all trained, Keeg, John said. We went through that training because someone has to do the hard things. We decided that's who we are. We were the ones strong enough to do the hard things. The training was pure hell, remember? But we all made it through. It made us strong. At one time, you were proud to be special ops. We all were. He's right, Keeg, Tristan said. You took pride in what you achieved. You took pride in what you were and the man you were. He shook his head slowly. You know, I'm thinking if this chick robs you of that pride, if she makes you feel dirty, then maybe you should break it off with her. You can't change who you are, man. Which is why I had to break it off with her. So what was that at the hospital? Braden asked. She seduced me. She knew just what she was doing. Well, it didn't take much. Yeah, well, it was just the wrong time. The waitress arrived with their drinks. Hello, sweetheart, Tristan said, deciding he better make his move. Hey, yourself, she said, smiling. Can I get y'all anything else? Just keep mine coming, Keegan said. Will do, she said, eyeing him briefly before turning her attention back to Tristan. Got any plans tonight? Tristan asked. Maybe. What you got in mind, sugar? You and me going for a ride in my Mustang. Maybe a romantic drive down by the ocean. Oh, that sounds nice, but I don't even know you. How do I know you aren't some serial killer? You can't tell just from my good looks, Tristan said. The rest of the table groaned. Ted Bundy was a good-looking guy, too, she returned. Tristan wouldn't hurt you, Braden said, deciding to help out his friend. He motioned toward Keegan. Don't you recognize him? She looked Keegan over. He does look familiar, but I can't place him. He's the FBI agent who's been all over the news the past 2 days. She looked again, her face becoming animated. Oh, it is you. Oh, my. Keegan glared at his friend. So you see, Braden continued, we're his buddies. You'd be safe with Tristan. The only person you'd be safer with is me. Oh, really? And he's not available, Tristan said, cutting a look toward his buddy. Well, then, I guess I'll be going for a scenic drive tonight, she said sweetly. But I don't get off until 1. I'll still be here, Tristan promised. Oh, by the way, what's your name? She smiled. It's Honey, like the nectar the bees make. She walked away. This time, they all watched her make her exit. Okay, Braden said, clearing his throat. So let's get back to the important matter of why Keegan dumped that sweet, perfect blonde who so sweetly and perfectly came to his room today and turned him to mush. No, let's not get back to it, Keegan said. I'm tired and half drunk and don't want to think about anything right now. Okay, but let me just ask you one more question. Keegan sighed. Shoot. Well, since you don't want her, can I have her? Keegan remained seated, his body deceptively relaxed. You keep your hands off her, he said quietly. Braden laughed loudly. Keeg, your answer speaks volumes, man. I don't know what crap this Nigel guy put in your brain, but it totally messed you up. It's obvious you'll never be happy without Miss Lizzie, so I suggest you get your head clear. John nodded. For once, Braden, I think you've got it right. For once? Braden asked. Look, guys, I appreciate your input. I'll figure it out. Let me just put that subject aside a moment so I can tell you idiots, thanks for, for showing up here and searching for me. Come on, Keeg, you ain't got to thank us. We got your back, and we know you got ours, Tristan said. Keegan nodded. I do. As for the record, Braden added, if I had to pick up someone to be on my side in a situation, I'd pick a killer like you. Hear, hear, they all said. Honey arrived with refills, but before Caleb could pick his up, Tristan took it from him. Hey, what's with that? Caleb asked. You're done, Tristan said. Why? Because I don't feel like carrying your butt out of here. Caleb cursed and slumped back in his chair. At that moment, the manager approached the small stage and took up the mic, asking for everyone's attention. He started making some patriotic speech about the military and cops and federal agents who put their lives on the line. It took a few minutes before Keegan realized he was referring to him. The manager had everyone raising a glass to him, and Keegan looked up to see his friends joining in. Sighing because he hated all the stupid publicity, he raised his glass in acknowledgment, and a few minutes later he had strangers coming over to shake his hand. Sorry, man, Braden offered, since it was his fault for telling Honey who Keegan was. Let's get the heck out of here. I'm sticking around to get a taste of Honey, Tristan said. The rest of you guys get going. Yeah, I've got to get the man hour over to the motel anyway, John said, motioning for the check. Keegan glanced sharply at John. What are you talking about? I promised Lizzie I would deliver you to her tonight. Well, you can forget it, Keegan said. Oh, you're going all right, John said, if I have to get these guys to help get you there. Your loyalties have changed? Keegan asked incredulously. No, man, they're still the same as always. My God, my wife and son, my brothers, my friends and family, my honor, my country. And you forcing me to see Lizzie tonight falls under which category? John grinned. My wife. You know how women stick together. Jody doesn't ask me for much, but when she does, I do my best to comply. Keegan mumbled a curse. What's the big deal, Keeg? Tristan asked. Go there, let her know what's what, and leave. Easy as that. Yeah, easy as that, Keegan muttered. New scene. Gasping, Lizzie sat up, her heart in her throat, and then she remembered she'd given up waiting on Keegan to show and gone to bed. It must be him knocking on the door. She dashed out of bed, flew to the door, and peeked out the peephole. She was so happy to see him standing there she had to suppress the tears of joy that welled in her eyes. Even though he supposedly was coming to tell her why they couldn't be together, she had other plans. She would do, say, or use anything to fight for the man she loves. She jerked the door open. Keegan scowled down at her as his buddies sped away, howling with laughter. Elizabeth, Keegan growled, looking her up and down. He pushed her back from the door and closed it. Are you trying to let the whole world see you like that? She'd forgotten to pull on her robe, and looking down at the white negligee she'd worn obviously for his benefit, she realized his friends got a good eyeful. Too bad, she shrugged. Well, maybe someone else will want what you don't, she said flippantly. His frown darkened as he tossed his bag on the floor by the dresser. What has gotten into you? I don't know what you mean. She turned to find the matching robe, knowing it wouldn't really hide anything. He grabbed her and pulled her up against his chest. I never said I didn't want you, he murmured. She wrinkled her nose. You're drunk. He laughed bitterly. No, I'm not, but I wanted to be. She jerked away, shaking her head. I don't understand, Keegan. There's nothing to understand. I've already told you it isn't going to work out between us. And yet you made love to me earlier today. I already explained that to you. What did you expect when you walk into my room looking like some high-class hooker? Her mouth dropped open. I have never hit anyone in my life, but you make me want to hit you. His eyes glittered with anger. You want to play rough? We can do that. Somehow she kept her body from trembling. I'm not afraid of you, Keegan Tanner, she said, realizing she didn't sound very convincing. I know you'd never hurt me. He grabbed a lock of her hair and considered some of the things he had in mind. If he did them, maybe then she'd believe what kind of man she was dealing with. But the thought of her being afraid of him made him sick. She was right. He'd never hurt her. Sighing, he let go of her hair and moved away. She stood there for several seconds, twisting her hands together. Finally, she motioned toward one of the chairs. Why don't you sit down? Would you like a soda or something? No, he said gruffly. He blew out a breath as he took the offered chair. She sat on the edge of the bed, across from him. Looking into his eyes, she smiled sweetly. His heart did a somersault. He just thought about threatening her with violence, and she was sitting there making goo-goo eyes at him. Did you mean it when you said you loved me? She asked timidly. I don't say things I don't mean. And you went to a lot of trouble to explain to me all about being undercover and why you lied about who you were. It seemed important to you that I know the truth, that what happened between me and you wasn't part of the lie. I didn't mean to fall in love with you, Elizabeth, but I did. Heaven help me, I did. And so, yeah, it was important that you know what happened between you and me was real. You wanted me to know that I wasn't just some girl you did, as you told that man. He gave a slight chuckle at the sound of that phrase coming out of her mouth. No, You weren't just someone I did. And then I got sick, and suddenly you didn't want me anymore. He looked away, not able to meet her pleading eyes. Keegan, look at me. Tell me. Did it have something to do with me being sick? Because I don't get sick very often. His eyes met hers. Oh, baby, he said gently. Of course not. Of course it wasn't because you got sick. His tone softening brought tears to her eyes. Well, then what happened in those few hours that changed your mind? Was I too easy, too clingy? Do the girls scare you? I understand that because they scare everyone else too. I can't get a man to give me the time of day because they're intimidated by the girls. She gave a false laugh. How are they? He asked quietly. They're fine. They love it there in Pine Forest. We're going to move down there, try to reestablish some semblance of a life. They asked about you when I called them today. They told me to let you know they miss you. I miss them too, he said softly. You don't have to, you know. You can see them anytime you want. But we've changed the subject, haven't we? Please, Keegan, tell me what I did to chase you away. He looked deep into her eyes. There was nothing but love shining in them. He came into her life, made her feel again, made her want again, and then destroyed the only home she'd ever known. And now, in essence, he's taken her innocence. He had no right to do any of that. He shook his head. Elizabeth, sweetheart, you didn't chase me away. He sighed. Look, do you understand what I do for a living? You put yourself in danger to protect others. You go after criminals or risk your life to save a friend. Sometimes you lie, but it's for a good cause, and sometimes you have to stay gone for a long time. I wouldn't complain about that, I swear. I'm so used to being alone anyway. Just knowing that you were coming back would get me through. His heart broke. His eyes closed. God, I love you, Elizabeth. A tear broke free and ran over her cheek. Well, then stay with me forever. Elizabeth, I've done things. Horrible things. You mean in the line of duty, like killing those two men who were about to rape me? Yes, that's exactly what I mean, only much worse. I understand that, Keegan. You do what you have to do to protect people. Would you rather have let those two men finish what they'd started? Don't be silly and don't make light of what I'm trying to say. I would never make light of you, Keegan. I don't even think that's possible. I'm just saying it doesn't matter to me what you've done or what you may have to do in the future. I love you, and I desperately need you to love me back. Deciding it was a good time for the next part of her plan, she stood and came to stand in front of him. Placing her hands on his shoulders, she leaned forward and offered a kiss. He hesitated only a moment before he accepted it. And that is the end of chapter 12.